Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. He's Chris Biderman, and he is wearing the official uniform of Candlestick Chronicles right now. At least I'm assuming so, because that's what you do every episode.
Yeah, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm wearing some lamb chops, fresh mesh shorts, because it is the middle of July, and the time of the year is quite pertinent to the conversation we're going to have about Brandon Aiyuk's trade request. But yeah, man, some mesh shorts on right now, courtesy of our friends over at Lamb Chops. Shout out to our buddy Craig. And obviously the lamb chops, whether it's the mesh shorts or the sweat shorts or the pants, the sweatpants, obviously super comfortable. My fiance has been rocking the Shepherd's Goods tie-dye hoodie, which she is currently obsessed with. So it's all unisex. It's all very comfortable. It's all high quality stuff. So check out Lamb Chops, sglambchops.com. Follow them on Instagram at sglambchops. When you purchase from their website, throw in the promo code Candlestick20. You will get 20% off your order. And you'll be living large, because you'll be in comfortable, high quality clothing, and you will have no regrets. In fact, you'll feel really pumped about it.
The very best. Love Lamb Chops. All right, the offseason has officially started. Brandon Aiyuk requested a trade, and we're going to talk about it. I feel like a bad takesman, in that my takeaway from the Brandon Aiyuk trade request, which was reported by NFL Media's Mike Garafolo earlier Tuesday morning, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon, was my reaction was very like, okay, like, meh. I didn't have it in me to bust out the flamethrower on either the 49ers or Brandon Aiyuk. I was pretty unmoved.
Yeah, this feels like something that it didn't surprise me at all. I was kind of expecting it. It was a when, not if type thing for me, because we saw it happen with Deebo Samuel in 2022. We've talked all along about how these negotiations between the 49ers and their star players have a tendency to get pretty contentious at times, but the Niners do tend to get these deals done. I don't think this really impacts my feeling overall at whether or not Brandon Aiyuk is going to be with the 49ers long term, or at least the foreseeable future. I still think a deal is going to get done. I also just think right now, like, Brandon Aiyuk doesn't have a whole lot of leverage, and this is how he's attempting to grab at some, right? Like he's at a position of strength on the team. The 49ers have Deebo Samuel. They re-signed Juwan Jennings, and they used a first-round draft pick on Ricky Pearsall. If you take Brandon Aiyuk out of that equation, I would argue it's still one of the better wide receiving cores in the league. Yep. The new collective bargaining agreement from a couple years ago makes it really, really tough on players who skip training camp. And if Brandon Aiyuk sits out, he's culpable for $100,000 in fines per missed practice. And if he doesn't show up at all, he's not going to accrue a season, and he's going to be in the exact same spot that he is right now a year later, and it's not going to benefit him at all, right? And that's not to say that, like, I don't support players trying to get every single dollar that they can. I think it absolutely behooves Brandon Aiyuk to, if he believes that this is going to give him a little bit of leverage, he can request a trade. And it's been reported by multiple outlets that the 49ers are not interested in trading Brandon Aiyuk, which I think you and I had assumed all along, right? They view Brandon Aiyuk as a foundational player going forward, and they do want to pay him. So I just think this is going to be a situation where we're going to get to the start of training camp, to some point in August, maybe just before the season starts in September. Two sides are going to meet in the middle, and it's going to be a deal that comes out to $26-27 million a year average annual value, right? And we're going to look back at this and say, yeah, this was kind of prolonged. But it's exactly what happened more or less with George Kittle and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel. Like, this is just kind of the same story. But what will be interesting, and we can talk about this too, is like how is this going to impact Brandon Aiyuk's season?
Sure.
Because it is fair to point out that the Niners, who have, particularly Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, coming off these protracted offseason negotiations, they have not had stellar seasons after getting their deals done. So it's notable. I don't think it's game changing.
Yeah, I think the how does it impact him thing we can get to for sure. But to me, this was the 49ers have their soft deadline, right, of training camp starting. That's their deadline spur action, their whole like negotiational ethos or whatever. Despite the fact the market's already been set and all the receivers have signed, nope, gotta wait because that's what you do, I guess. But it felt like everything Brandon Aiyuk has been doing on social media to this point has been because Garofalo reported that the 49ers haven't been at the negotiation table since May. And that sounds about right. They're going to throw out their lowball offer or not their lowball offer, but their lowest offer. And Aiyuk's going to send a high one. And then by the end of July, they come to the table and they get to somewhere in the middle. They find that sweet spot, as John Lynch calls it. So it feels to me like everything Brandon Aiyuk has done on social media to this point has been like trying to get the 49ers to the table, trying to get them to act and negotiate. And like you just said, this is kind of the last card in his hand. And it was like he had a deadline of, okay, rookies report. If I don't have a deal by rookies reporting, then I'm gonna ask out. And okay, cool. But he's still under contract. If the 49ers don't trade him, he's under contract and either has to show up and play or lose out on a season's worth of checks and then be a 49er next year. Like it doesn't behoove him to hold out. The 49ers know that. The Niners also know that they have the franchise tag. That's something we've talked about a lot on this podcast. So it's like, it's fun. It's not a bad thing that he went out and requested a trade. It's just not, if he had done this pre-draft, it would have been a lot more interesting, but the Niners aren't going to.
Deebo Samuel did.
Yeah, right. And that was like the Jets were on the clock. And we were sitting there going, hey, are the Jets going to make this pick or the Niners? So he didn't do it before the draft, which took away all of his leverage there in requesting a trade publicly because the Niners aren't going to deal him for draft picks. They would have to deal him for a player of equal or better value, and teams don't just give away players like that. So, no, I don't see a lot coming from the trade request. But to your point, man, now we're in the realm of, does this linger into the season? Even if he signs, is there just like is there just some awkwardness and some tension that winds up impacting the 49ers?
Yeah, we'll see. I think overall, I think this is sort of like an avatar for the like the more basic statistical evaluation of receivers and the efficiency advanced metrics evaluation of receivers, right? And if you look at just like ESPN had a graphic on Nick Wagner's story, and shout out to Nick for his reporting on this today too. But the top 9 receivers in the NFL average annual salary, right? And just listed Justin Jefferson makes $35 a year, AJ Brown 32, Amon-Ra St. Brown 30, Tyreek Hill 30, Jalen Waddle 28.3, Devontae Adams 28, Cooper Kupp 26.8, Devontae Smith, who signed this offseason, made 25, whose numbers are probably most closely resemble Aiyuk. Nico Collins got 24.3. Here's why I mentioned these guys. Brandon Aiyuk, and let's just say the last 3 seasons, right? I looked at the last 3 seasons because, we don't really need to dive into Brandon Aiyuk's rookie season to determine whether or not he got paid, right? Like once he got sort of his footing and established in the league, his last 3 seasons in comparison with everybody else on this list. So Brandon Aiyuk, 209 catches, 3,183 yards over the last 3 seasons, right? Justin Jefferson has 95 more catches, and roughly 1,300 yards more over those 3 seasons. He's making $35 million a year. AJ Brown, 48 more catches and something like a little less than 500 yards. Around 600 yards more over the last 3 seasons. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 106 more catches than Brandon Aiyuk, some 400 yards more than Brandon Aiyuk. Tyreek Hill, 140 more catches over the last 3 seasons, 1,600 yards, roughly. Jalen Waddle, 42 more catches than Brandon Aiyuk over the last 3 seasons, and 200, about 200 yards. Point is, you can go down the list of the 9 highest paid guys in terms of like catches. Brandon Aiyuk, if you add him to that list, it's 10 guys long. He's 9th in catches and 8th in yards. Right? He's only above Nico Collins, who has 150 catches to Brandon Aiyuk's 209, and 2,224 yards to Brandon Aiyuk's 3,183 yards. But so that's cumulative, right? Those are like cumulative basic receiving numbers. And obviously there's a statistical crowd who will say that's not an accurate representation of who Brandon Aiyuk is. I'm just saying that if you're the 49ers and you're making the argument of why you shouldn't pay him $30 million a year, those are the numbers that you show him. The numbers that Brandon Aiyuk in his camp will show the 49ers are the fact that he led the league. I think it was 17.8 yards per reception last year. Pull up his PFF page, his receiving grade, indigo blue. Deep blue.
He is the 49th ranked player overall by Pro Football Focus.
And second highest receiving grade from receivers, right? And he's third on the list of those 10 guys of yards per route run, and 8th in the NFL among receivers in yards per route run. So if you look at the advanced numbers, the efficiency numbers, it says, yeah, Brandon Aiyuk's probably a guy who's worth top 5 receiver money. If you look at the overall numbers, you'd say, yeah, he's probably closer to 7, 8, 9. And that would make absolute sense in terms of what the gap here probably is between the Niners and Brandon Aiyuk. The Niners, and this is just me speculating, probably say, yeah, we'll give you 25, 26, $27 million a year. And Brandon Aiyuk's like, no, I want 30. Right?
Which makes sense.
Which it makes sense for both sides. Like, I totally get why both sides would dig their heels in. And the context for the 49ers is that they're $38 million in the red next year before they even sign Brock Purdy to his new deal. Right? So the Niners are right to be pinching pennies at this point. And we can talk about, well, plenty of time to discuss the machinations of the salary cap stuff next year. But we've pointed out that the wind's blowing towards Deebo Samuel maybe spending his last season with the 49ers this year, given he has no more guaranteed money left on his deal beyond this season.
Right.
If you get Brandon Aiyuk signed. Point here is that it makes sense for both sides, like where they're coming from when it comes to these negotiations. Brandon Aiyuk's case is all about efficiency. What are we doing here?
My bad. It's fine. I have a thing to share. Spoiler alert.
It's all good. And the 49ers case is like, yeah, we definitely want to pay you, but we don't think you're a $30 million a year receiver.
Sure.
And so to me, it feels like they're just going to meet in the middle somewhere, $26, $27 million. And if you're Brandon Aiyuk and you're unhappy, given you don't have any leverage, if you're really unhappy, sign a 2-year deal and see if you can maximize the guaranteed money that you can get from those 2 years, and then get another bite at the apple. What I would argue, though, and I've mentioned it here on this pod before, I wonder if the receiver market is going to pop. And at some point, teams are going to say, no, we're not going to pay $35 million a year for a receiver when we can just use a first-round pick on a guy who could give us 70, 80% of that receiver in the first few years of his contract.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to take... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to... It's like a rookie deal is, 10% of the price of what a $35 million a year receiver makes.
I think that's... I said this today on my radio show on ESPN 1320 Sacramento. Check us out. Sacramento's finest sports talk radio station. What's up, Roast Dog? But I said this today, and I did a bad thing and got in an argument with someone on Facebook. And there, I know that, dude, that's such an old fashioned sentence, but their argument was basically, look at Ayuk's numbers. He's a $14 million receiver, which is insane just on its surface, but whatever. There's some peripheral stuff that I think matters here, though, where I don't necessarily disagree with you that at some point the receiver market is going to pop, and I think it's going to take, maybe it's this receiver class. Maybe Rome Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors are all just freaking awesome, and everyone goes, oh, well, we can just do that. But right now, I think there's too many bad receivers who are taken in the first round, and teams get scared off because of that. But I'm with you. I think it's trending that direction. And right now, one of the things that Aiyuk does is, this is put together by Matt Harmon from Reception Perception. And what this graph I'm showing you on the YouTube feed, and if you're listening to the podcast, it's just like a route tree. And it's showing success rate in that route tree. And all of the arrows are green. You get green, yellow, or red. And every arrow for Aiyuk is green by success. And what that means is defenses have to defend everything with Aiyuk. And there's a note to the side on Harmon's post where he has a 78.7% success rate against man, which is 96th percentile. He has 85.4% success rate against zone, that's 91st percentile, and 83.6% success rate versus press, which is 97th percentile. It's really freaking hard to guard Brandon Aiyuk. And that allows Kyle Shanahan to deploy him in every conceivable way, and it's a headache for defenses. Because they can't say, yeah, we're just going to play press man and eliminate Brandon Aiyuk from the game, which may be the case with Ricky Pearsall or Jacob Cowing or insert other receiver who would replace Brandon Aiyuk here. So the fact that Brandon Aiyuk gets open and has success on virtually every single route that he runs and against every type of coverage that is going to be run against him, like, that is just such a massive advantage that goes beyond the raw numbers. And I think if you're Brandon Aiyuk, that's why you're looking at the Niners offense and going, well, this is a run first offense. This is never going to be if they're winning games, this is never going to be an offense that is top 10 in pass attempts. That's just not Kyle Shanahan's philosophy. That's not the way he wants to go about it. So he's looking at this and going, my raw numbers are never going to stack up with Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and all those guys that you just listed. But a lot of the offensive success that the 49ers do have is because I am really good at all of these things. Plus, he's an outstanding run blocker. So I think it's tough if you're the Niners to convince yourselves that, oh yeah, we can just go get Ricky Pearsall can just be a close enough facsimile to Brandon Aiyuk, because that would mean Ricky Pearsall is really freaking good. And I don't think you can necessarily bank on that.
Yeah. And that's all fair. Like that's definitely all fair. And I agree. I just think that's given the, like, people are talking about the market exploding, like for receivers in terms of what everyone's getting paid. I also think the market just keeps saturating. Like that's part of it too, is like, it feels like every year now there are sick receivers you can get in the first or second round of the draft.
Yeah.
And Aiyuk is an example of that, right? Like
yeah.
Aiyuk is somebody who's played really well on his rookie contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I think qualitatively, he's definitely a top 10, top 8 receiver. And I think numbers wise, the numbers aren't there because, to your point, the Niners run a run first offense and have so many other weapons. But I also think the 49ers team built, like the status of their team is impacting this as much, if not more than the way they value Brandon Aiyuk. Like, I think the fact that they are under such a money crunch, which is not like, none of that is Brandon Ayuk's problem. Like, he should not go into negotiations being like,
of course.
I mean, he could if he wanted to, but I would never knock a player for, saying, I don't care what other contracts you gave out. Like, that doesn't matter to me at all. But the Niners are, like I said, a projected $38 million in the red next year. So they're going to have to get very creative with Brock Purdy's extension and this Brandon Aiyuk deal, while trying to keep a competitive team together, while trying to win the Super Bowl this year, right? And that's why, stepping back, that's why I don't think they're trading Brandon Aiyuk. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to trade him at this point. right? Like you would much rather like, all right, maybe we have to pay a little bit here, or give a little bit more guaranteed money than we're comfortable giving here, just to ensure that we have our chance to win the Super Bowl this year. And honestly, it's July 16th. The 49ers don't feel any pressure to get a deal done on July 16th.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to feel a little bit more pressure when, the games start mattering in September.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's basically what they did with Nick Bosa too.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting a deal to get done, and it'll be a big deal. Probably some funny money involved, probably some void years. But the guess would be some guaranteed money in the first 2 years of the deal that allow Brandon Aiyuk a chance to renegotiate or extend and get a new contract.
Yeah.
But maybe it gets really ugly. Like maybe because we talk about the 49ers having success with all these deals getting done and retaining their key players, maybe they're due for it to just hit an impasse, and Brandon Aiyuk not willing to budge at all, and the team not willing to budge at all, and then a deal's not done and it's week 1, and then there's like, all right, we just got to trade him. And maybe that happens. I think it's highly, highly unlikely. And I think that would be a pretty disastrous outcome. But I don't think it's impossible. And I would put it at probably, 97.6% chance they get the deal done.
97.6. You crunch those numbers?
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
According to my algorithm.
Hey, do you want to just make this our receiver preview podcast? Which was not the plan, but since we're talking about it, we can just dive in.
Yeah,
because to me, the next stage of this conversation has everything to do with every other player on the roster. So, welcome to the 49ers wide receiver training camp review. Check out our other previews of other positions we've done on the feed. I think is Aiyuk in camp the biggest question to start. And I think we just explained all the reasons why.
Yeah. And we should point out too, like one thing, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, yeah, maybe you get paid from Washington. Yeah, maybe you get paid from Pittsburgh or New England. Do we think Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a more successful player with another team than he would be if he just stayed with the 49ers long term?
Ooh. I'm going to say no, but I'm also not high on any quarterback on any of those rosters. So,
I mean, he's high on Jaden McDaniels, obviously.
Well, yeah, that's his guy, but like maybe Jaden Daniels is awesome. Maybe Drake May is awesome. Maybe Justin Fields or Russell Wilson figure it out for the next 5 years. But
I've been in NBA world too much with the McDaniels thing, but no, I think
world.
I called him Jaden McDaniels.
Who's that in the NBA? Oh, Jaden McDaniels. Duh. My bad. I was Jesus Christ.
I'm like, wait, am I who's
Jaden McDaniels? As a big Wolves guy, that's embarrassing.
So, anyway, I think if you're Brandon Aiyuk, like the Niners are far more likely to contend than like Brandon Aiyuk, if he cares about his legacy and like wants to play in Super Bowls, it's not going to Washington or even Pittsburgh, I would argue at this point.
Sure. I can completely.
Anyway, there's that. And I do think his chemistry with Brock Purdy is something that's important to factor into this.
I think that's a reason that the 49ers should be trying to sign him too, by the way. Well, that might be something that Brandon Aiyuk thinks about and goes, well, I have great chemistry with this quarterback. The Niners should be like, hey, he has great chemistry with our young franchise quarterback who we're about to give $60 million a year to.
Yeah.
Punting his favorite receiver would be nuts. But anyway.
Well, they're not going to trade him.
Right. I would agree.
So my big question is, I guess just piggybacking off this whole Brandon Aiyuk conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Pearsall went on NFI today, had spent the spring practicing in a blue non-contact jersey. It's been reported that the injury is not believed to be serious. It's gonna keep him out of practice until he's activated off NFI. So training camp doesn't start until next week. when veterans report. I'm not super alarmed yet, but my question is, how good is Ricky Pearsall going to be? Like from the jump, right? I'm optimistic about Ricky Pearsall long term, but if Ricky Pearsall comes into training camp, and I don't think this is going to happen because he had a much better offseason, but let's just say Ricky Pearsall comes into camp and he looks like AJ Jenkins. Does the 49ers situation change in terms of how badly they feel like they need to get Brandon Aiyuk in there? Or conversely, does Ricky Pearsall look awesome in camp? And they're like, yeah, Brandon, you want to stay away and accrue all these fines? Like, that's fine by us, but we're not budging on our number because we really like this rookie that we drafted.
That's dicey.
I don't think that's likely, but that's I think dicey. It's Brandon Aiyuk's situation, the context of what Ricky Pearsall adds to it, I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like the Pearsall selection just in general was what kind of kicked all of this off, right? I in my NFL Wire Network Slack, when Pearsall went 31, I got a bunch of messages like, wow, trading Aiyuk, huh? It's like, whoa, no, what's happening here? But I do think that's interesting. If he's not showing up and every report out of camp is how awesome Ricky Pearsall looks, does that, I think what that might do, to just to kind of your point, is it might spur action by Aiyuk. Because now the 49ers, his leverage is the 49ers need him. Right? Like and I still believe that. I am a proponent of the 49ers paying Brandon Aiyuk. But if you're Aiyuk and you're sitting there going, yeah, all right, they need me and I'm going to show them, and then Pearsall goes out and is a close enough with Juwan Jennings, they in the aggregate can create Brandon Aiyuk's production, then all of a sudden he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe they don't need me as much. My leverage is slipping. Let me get back to the table and bring this offer down.
Yeah. Pearsall becomes, with this Aiyuk stuff, Pearsall becomes one of the Niners' most interesting players for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. But he was in a blue non-contact jersey for most of OTAs and minicamp, and now he's on the NFI. So interesting.
All that being said, we both listed Pearsall as our breakout candidate among the Niners receiving corps.
Yeah, it's just like maybe it's Jacob Cowing, but Pearsall is going to get all the chances. I wouldn't call Juwan Jennings a breakout candidate. We know what we're going to get from Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, so it's like Ricky Pearsall's next, unless there's a huge Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell fan in the chat. But we'll talk about those guys in a bit.
What do you think? Oh, yeah, I guess we can talk about that. I think Pearsall's good, and I'm curious to see, like, is he like Puka Nacua as a rookie good? Like, can he be that guy with Brock Purdy?
Just all-time great rookie season?
Well, I know that's super lofty, right? But, like, I think if you were to ask Kyle Shanahan if he thinks Ricky Pearsall could do it, he would say yes, obviously, because he's super confident.
Right.
But I just think, like, I'm not ruling it out. And I'm not saying Puka Nacua numbers. I'm just saying, like, oh, the Niners have another dude at receiver all of a sudden.
Yeah, just because the production is so hard to get a grasp on, right? Because let's assume Brandon Aiyuk is back. You're gonna have Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, who is a trusted third down target. George Kittle's still there. Christian McCaffrey's still there. There's already a ton of mouths to feed. So trying to bank on some level of production is tough. But if he is just a competent NFL wide receiver from day one, just like out the box, ready to go, one of Aiyuk or Samuel is hurt, they're going to plug in Ricky Pearsall and feel great about it. That would be significant for sure.
For me, like, if Brandon Aiyuk is under contract and playing, it wouldn't, like, Deebo Samuel strains a hamstring or someone, gets concussed. And then in the second quarter of a game, Ricky Pearsall is all of a sudden going from no snaps to playing 60% of the offensive snaps or whatever. Would it surprise you if at any point that happened and then you look up at the end of the game and Ricky Pearsall's like 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown?
Not even a little bit.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I think he could be. But what's going to be interesting is, does he even get those opportunities? whether it's injury or does he play well enough in training camp to force Kyle Shanahan's hand and be like, no, they got to get this guy in the field.
Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting in camp to see how Ricky Pearsall adapts to just learning the offense and playing in pads, and then B, if he does, where does that playing time come in? Yeah. Do the 49ers, are they suddenly like a 4-wide team anytime they're in second or third and medium? Or is it he's taking Juwan Jennings snaps? Are they putting Juwan Jennings? Are they 4-wide, but Juwan Jennings is playing tight end? Like I don't. There's a million things they could do if Ricky Pearsall is good.
Yeah,
fascinating. Position battles for you. Some good ones here. Oh boy.
So Jake Cowling, 4th round pick out Arizona. I would give him the edge over Ron Bell and Dan Gray.
Yeah, same.
I just don't. I think if Kyle Shanahan was super pumped on Ronnie Bell or Danny Gray, he would not have invested a 4th round pick in sort of a redundant spot. And I think he has such a specific skill set that Kyle Shanahan has already envisioned like the plays that he's going to run for that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some of that has to do with the new kickoff situation. Maybe they're just going to be like gadget plays. Maybe he's going to be what, Marquise Goodwin and Travis Benjamin were, just as like, hey, run really fast straight and, occupy a safety while we do some stuff underneath. Maybe that's what it is.
Go occupy that safety while we do some stuff is so funny.
But I think Cowling is he's a 4th round pick, so it would be a disaster if he didn't make the team.
Yeah.
But
I'm penciling him in for a roster spot.
Yeah, which comes at the cost of Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell. I think Chris Conley's going to make it, but it'll probably be somebody who, is like on the practice squad, come final cuts, like doesn't make the final 53, but then gets elevated on game days to play special teams.
Hey, do you want to bet a thing that's going to happen? Like I'm telling you, this is going to happen week 1.
Sure.
Chris Conley on the practice squad, Jacob Cowling on the active roster, Jacob Cowling healthy scratch, Chris Conley up.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
and
happening.
Then the collective freak out.
Yes. Can't wait. Because Jacob Cowling had one sick catch in a training camp practice and everybody decided that he was in the second coming. So it's those 5 and maybe the Niners only keep those 5 with Chris Conley as the de facto 6th receiver coming up off the practice squad. And maybe that Ronnie Bell, Dan Gray position battle just doesn't ever happen. If it does come down, if they do keep 6 and it's between Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell, I just look, Danny Gray in his one season played 19 special team snaps. Ronnie Bell at least caught 3 touchdowns, which is 2 more receptions total than Danny Gray had his rookie year. And he also played like 100 plus special team snaps. So I can't imagine a realistic world anyway, where Danny Gray is making the 49ers roster over Ronnie Bell, or frankly over Chris Conley, and maybe even over Trent Taylor. Like I think he is way down the depth chart going into camp.
There hasn't been any indication from Kyle Shanahan or really anybody in the building that like they're super optimistic about Danny Gray. Yeah.
The fact that he was healthy last year and just on IR because they didn't want to cut a 9th string defensive lineman to put him on the roster is wild. And tells you, I think, everything you need to know. So maybe Danny Gray makes a huge leap this offseason, but I'm not banking on that.
That's what I was going to say. It would take sort of a transformation of Danny Gray for him to make the team at this point. So adding 2 receivers did not bode well for his chances.
No.
You mentioned Trent Taylor. I was going to say we hadn't mentioned him yet. Do you have any Trent Taylor thoughts? To me, I think he's an extreme long shot to make it, unfortunately.
Yeah, same. It's certainly not going to because of any value he has as a pass catcher. He was primarily a punt returner for Cincinnati the last few years. Maybe the 49ers just need someone to catch punts and they're just nobody else can do it and everybody else is a disaster. Then sure, Trent Taylor sneaks onto the roster. But I think he might be with with Chris Conley as a practice squad player who comes up for, if there's an injury or whatever.
Agreed.
Or for that little game check.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, like Trent Taylor, the dude, quality human, but it's not looking great.
The 49ers as a roster have advanced beyond what Trent Taylor can provide.
Correct.
I think. He also had the back injury in his second year, which I don't think helped much. So I've got Aiyuk, Samuel, Jennings, Pearsall, Cowing, and if it's one last one, I think it's probably Ronnie Bell because of teams.
You're talking like final cuts, 53?
Yeah.
And then Cowing and Bell are healthy scratches when they have Chris Connolly up.
Yep.
From the P squad.
Yeah, depending on how everything else shakes out elsewhere on the roster, I don't want to rule out Ronnie Bell healthy or active on game days just yet, depending on what the team's group looks like. But yeah, that's kind of how it's trending.
Calling teams is one of my favorite things.
It's so funny. Hey, do you know what's fascinating?
We need to make this a segment. What Kyle thinks is fascinating this week.
Is this an interesting boring thing or a boring interesting thing? No, I was joking. I was gonna make a joke about how we need to talk more about who's gonna be down on game days. Jarrett Kingston, project guy.
This Trent Taylor thing is fascinating. Trent Taylor versus Jake Cowling, it's just lassoed.
Danny Gray. Danny Gray's route running, something I'm really intrigued to watch in camp this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to see how sudden he looks in and out of his breaks.
That definitely makes one of us. What's your group grade for the Niners receiving corps?
It's an A+ group, dude. It's a top 5-ish receiving corps in the league. They're really, really good. And if Ricky Pearsall, you know what? Let me back up. It's an A group. If Ricky Pearsall is good, if he is equivalent to Brandon Aiyuk in year one, not equivalent to rookie Brandon Aiyuk as a rookie, then I think you've got an A+ group here, because that's 4 receivers that you feel really good about being on the field, and that's pretty rare.
Yeah, I think it's an A group for sure. And definitely a possibility to reach that A+ status, because I really like the unique skill sets that it has. You have Aiyuk, who's kind of the all-around guy. You have Debo, who's like the yak monster. Mm-hmm. You have Jennings, who can be like the physical, big slot, as we like to call him in the league. You have Cowing, who's the jitterbug. And you have Pearsall, who could be one of those all-around type guys. So I think it's a really good group with really strong complementary skill sets. And there's, you have veterans and young guys. Like, there's a good mix. It's not like it's not a group where, you have too many old guys and you need a youth movement, or you have too many young guys and you need to go get Pierre Garçon to be a veteran mentor, or whatever. It's a good mix of veteran and youth.
Anquan Bolden, the Jerry Rice of Pierre Garçons?
Yes.
Okay.
That's strong. Yeah.
Thanks. I was gonna make 2 other jokes. I have nothing serious left to say on this podcast. Ricky Pearsall, sneaky athlete.
Is it sneaky?
Grit.
We did the Spadergraph thing when he got drafted. He's like a for real athlete. I think Kyle Shanahan saying that Ricky Pearsall reminds him of himself is the funniest thing that.
But also, I think the highest compliment he's ever paid a player ever.
Who's not named Kirk Cousins or Brock Purdy?
Yeah, of course. Highest wide receiver compliment he's ever paid. Brandon Aiyuk's out there being an all-pro, and Shanahan's like, yeah, he's got some stuff to work on. Sick.
The Pearsall thing is funny to me for reasons we can talk about offline, but
Okay.
I just really enjoyed when Shanahan said he reminded him. Like Ricky Pearsall, first round NFL draft pick, elite college player, and Kyle Shanahan, not all that athletically gifted, played at Texas, but not really much.
Fringe roster bubble guy at the University of Texas.
But him and Pearsall did have one or two things in common, which is what we can talk about offline.
Tattoos, one. Flat bill hats, two. No, I think a funny thing would be, we called this an A group that has a chance to get to an A+ group. I think it would be funny when we go to camp to ask somebody about that. Hey, you guys were given an A on Candlestick Chronicles. What do you feel you have to do to get to that A+ range?
Well, first of all, what it mean to you to know that the guys at Candlestick Chronicles, think that highly of the group? What's it say about the work you've put in?
What were your emotions when you found out? Do you think Kyle Shanahan's played NCAA 25?
Yeah.
I agree. He's definitely created himself, right?
He probably bought it. He probably brought it to Cabo and
facts. Well, it just came out yesterday.
Oh, well, bought it in Cabo. Or maybe can you get a digital copy?
Maybe
I don't have a console. I think you can get a digital copy. So
yeah. So I definitely think he's played. He's a quarterback though, right?
I mean, he loves receiver. That's his position.
Yeah, I guess. Anyways, he's definitely played it. He's devoted some amount of time to playing that game. For sure.
Oh, wow.
That's all I have to say. What do we got?
George Rusakis and Mark Bartelstein of Priority Sports, this is according to Woj, have gotten the deal done for free agent forward Sandro Mamukelashvili.
Oh, shit! Are you serious?
Yeah, huge news for George Rusakis and Mark Bartelstein of Priority Sports.
Classic Rusakis and Bartelstein 1-2.
just all over it. Shout out to those guys. Shout out to Woj for the reporting.
I love that the new in, because there's so much competition between him and Shams. He's like, hey, if you give me this, I'll tweet your name.
Yeah. If you're unfamiliar with the humor and you're watching us or listening to us asking why this is funny, the trend of tagging agents and or reporting which agents did said deals, and the replies that come from it, the people who understand what's happening here, it's very funny. I'm really enjoying this development in NBA reporting. And no disrespect to Woj, or Shams, if you're getting news and there's certain things you have to do to get the news within, ethical standards, tagging some guys in a tweet is not the worst thing in the world. But it's just extremely funny that we find out which agents negotiated the deals now.
It's great. It's my favorite. It's my favorite part. My favorite thing is when he reports the deal and then follows it up with a thread that includes deal was negotiated by. Thanks, Woj. It's good. It's good stuff.
And then the replies, which are the funniest, oh my God, so-and-so agent negotiated. I'm crying right now. I can't believe it. It's so good.
All right. That's all I've got. We're making jokes about Woj now, so it's time to end the wide receiver podcast.
All right, we will talk to you guys later. Check us out on YouTube, subscribe, notification bell, all those things, and wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll talk to you guys later.